Mount up! We're coming!
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Purple Insider. Matthew Coller here. The show is always presented by FanDuel. We will have a FanDuel question of the day a little later in the show. Questions, comments, and thoughts and opinions in the comment section. Hit me up. I'll answer your questions very shortly. I got a bunch of notes to run through from Vikings and Bears. I spent the day watching back the All-22 film and going through all the numbers and have a bunch of things to break down, as well as listening to Kevin O'Connell's press conference. So probably should start there with what Kevin O'Connell had to say, and then we'll get to all the analysis and break it all down and have a conversation about where the now 4-6 Minnesota Vikings stand. And I know the discussion has to be centered around the quarterback after that game, but I think that a lot of the conversation out there in the social media sphere and so forth has been, maybe going a little too far in a couple of different ways. So I'll get into all that momentarily, but just wanted to bring a couple of quotes from Kevin O'Connell that I thought were interesting to start the show. First, he just talked about some of the things where JJ McCarthy is making it a little harder on himself than it needs to be. O'Connell was asked about the mechanics and why some of the mechanics seem to be working for him, maybe in practice, and then what he saw when he was going through the tape, what was going on mechanically with McCarthy. So let's begin with that.
There are some plays where he's making it hard on himself just by the nature of many of the things that I think that's probably the most frustrating part for him. It's talked about and repped and practiced at length, and then in those moments, in his fifth start, it's just the variance to it is causing his job to be more difficult than it needs to be. And he's wildly capable of making the throws that present themselves. There were some good throws in there as well. Some throws there late that even after what had been a frustrating day for him, his ability to still respond like he has a couple times now and move the team late to get a lead. He's made of the right stuff. He's going to keep working at it. We're going to go back to work and continue to find every avenue, every way to try to help build the consistency to his mechanics, and then I firmly believe the accuracy will come from that. It's been tried and true and tested with other players and guys that have been on their journey before.
So there, Kevin O'Connell talking about the mechanical element of it and how he feels like McCarthy is, quote, wildly capable of making the throws that are there and has made it harder on himself than it needs to be, which I think is a really great description and a great place to get into what I saw on tape, because I think that he really nailed it when it comes to some of the mechanics where the throws are there and he will add something else to the mix that doesn't need to be there. And a really good example is the Jordan Addison drop early in the game where, yes, Jordan Addison absolutely needs to catch that ball. It hits off his hands, and maybe we're talking about a different ball game if Addison brings it in, gets 20, 30 yards there, and then they're set up in field goal position, or maybe they score a touchdown or whatever else. And there's no debating the drops in this game hurt McCarthy. It hurt his completion percentage. It certainly hurt their chances in a couple of different instances to get some first downs and keep some drives going. But when we wonder about some of the drops that have happened, timing does have to do with at least a little bit of it. And I thought that last week with the Jefferson ball where he was going into the end zone, but it was a little bit late coming out. And on the play with Jordan Addison in the drop, this is right off the beginning of the game. He drops back. He's got a totally clean pocket. If he just shuffles a little bit to his left, he starts to feel a tiny bit of pressure from his right. If he shuffles a little bit to his left and just delivers the ball, Addison runs right into it, catches it, it's got a big gain. But being a little bit late meant sort of taking almost a running pedal up into the pocket like he was about to scramble, and then went, oh, actually I see Addison open, and let it go. That wasn't where he expected to be getting the football. Now, again, he's got to catch it. He said he's got to catch it. I'm saying he's got to catch it. But it was just an example of making it harder on himself than it needed to be, where a shuffle and a throw and a little anticipation guides him right into the football. And instead, he is stepping up. And it's once again the issue of if you are running and then throwing, the ball is coming out very, very hot. And also, I think the corner did grab Jordan Addison from behind, which may have thrown him off ever so slightly. Again, that's a catch that he makes 99 times out of 100, and then we would never be talking about it. But I think it was a great look at some of the mechanical issues that we have been talking about. And I do want to, before I get into much more of this, I want to give a little bit of a PSA about the conversation here and where we're going to start. This is a look at yesterday's game. So every single critique or thing that I point out, whether it's good or bad, is not a statement about the bigger picture. And that seems to be a little bit of, I think, a problem when it comes to talking about JJ McCarthy, is that every single thing that gets tossed out there is either has to be in one of the two buckets of he's going to be great, just you wait because he made this throw, or he's a bust because he made that throw. What I'm doing is looking at the Bears game, okay, for the purpose. And then when I'm not, I'll tell you. So for right now, we're looking at the Bears game and applying what Kevin O'Connell said in that quote that you just heard and going through that, okay, like through that lens of the mechanical issues and making things harder on himself than they needed to be. So one of the major issues with this game for me is the number of routine throws that came from a clean pocket that did not get completed. This was, I believe, the best pass protection I have ever covered in a single game from the Minnesota Vikings. It was fantastic. And that is in part JJ McCarthy, and he deserves credit for that. That you see him in a couple of different instances. I'll give you an example where when he misses the throw on 3rd and 7 to Justin Jefferson, he brings in CJ Ham, and I believe he maybe signals something, a check to TJ Hawkinson. So they bring in extra protection. They get this all-out type of blitz, and then he identifies where he's supposed to go with the football to Jefferson one-on-one with Noah Sewell. It should be a really nice sort of high-level quarterback play of getting the protection right, identifying where the blitz is coming from, and then getting to the right read, where I believe it's only a two-man concept where you have somebody, maybe Addison, clearing out, and then there comes Jefferson underneath, and it's a pitch and catch, as O'Connell said, out route, and he just straight up misses it. And I think that some of it is when he's had these mechanical issues, when he's thrown a couple interceptions in the game, and he was asked about it snowballing and so forth, and I know he tried to downplay that, but I felt like it was if you're a golfer and you've duffed a few and then you're trying to slow down your swing and then you swing too hard at the end and you hit it over and you just get all thrown off because it gets in your head. I think that happened a little bit to JJ McCarthy too, where he was just trying to guide it there rather than just stepping and throwing, and he ended up guiding it over Jefferson and out of bounds. But that is a routine throw. The interception by Nahshon Wright was a routine play where it is a two-man concept on that side. Actually, three-man concept on that side. Hawkinson comes to the middle. Naylor breaks behind him, and Addison is going deep down the sideline, and he's got Naylor wide open. So that should be a routine pitch and catch completion. He passes up on that and then is late to throw it to Addison, but it also felt like he was trying to guide it there. I don't know if that at that point it was a confidence thing as well, but he didn't put the right amount of distance on the football, and it goes up, it hangs up in the air. Wright's able to turn around. He makes a really great play to intercept that ball, but just another example of the routine throw, the pitch and catch, the 95% completion percentage type of throw is right there in front of him, and he takes the harder route to it, but he doesn't quite get it right mechanically and leaves the ball hanging up a little too much or doesn't put enough distance on it, and it ends up getting intercepted. These are things that you would expect every quarterback to be able to complete that pass and identify that Naylor was wide open breaking underneath. And if not, you expect every quarterback to be able to put enough air under that ball to get it to the back of the end zone where it's either Jordan Addison's or nobody's. And instead, it barely gets to the end zone. And that's where Nahshon Wright intercepts it. There's another one on a deep ball that was not intercepted. And I'm sure you guys, I try to pick out plays that were really memorable to talk about, where the two Bears players ran into each other and both of them got hurt. Well, one of the reasons they both ran into each other is because McCarthy was late on that throw, and Brisker, the safety, realizes where he's going with the football and takes a beeline right to it. And that's the difference between college and the NFL, is the timing is just so much more precise, or it has to be, because the other team's players are so fast. Brisker is a great safety, and as soon as McCarthy takes that little extra half second and reveals where he's going with the football, Brisker just takes off, and the ball comes up well short and is almost picked off by two different guys. But earlier in that play, Justin Jefferson is wide open right in front of JJ McCarthy. I mean, it is a max protect, two guys going out against a single high coverage, and Jefferson beats his man off the line of scrimmage to the middle of the field. It is as open and as simple and as easy, and none of this is easy because it's the NFL, but by NFL standards, completion right in front of him, and he hesitates, and then he tries to launch it, and I'm not sure if it was going to Jefferson or Addison, to tell you the truth, down the sideline, and is almost picked off by two different guys. Those are the types of routine plays that were not being made from JJ McCarthy, and I think when you talk about being very concerned about the accuracy, concerned about the mechanics, that's really the place that you start, is that these are day one OTAs types of plays that Kevin O'Connell has drawn up for every quarterback, and they've worked for every quarterback that he's had here. Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold, Nick Mullins, even Josh Dobbs has hit some of these during his time here. They are sort of standards in the NFL, standard types of plays. And some of them he was able to hit, and some of them he was able to complete. But the misses, the extreme misses, were really costly for them yesterday. And they're one of the reasons, being late and not having your timing correct. And I don't know if that's a matter of whether he's got the footwork down or it was just a trust in the throw. Because when we talk about anticipation, this is a huge, huge thing in the NFL. Jefferson goes straight up and then breaks across the middle of the field. As soon as he's out of his break, the ball should be hitting him. You should be seeing as the quarterback, all right, that single high safety is 30 yards down the field. He's going to take the deep guy. They're sending a pressure. It should be out of your hand way before he is even totally out of his break, and he should be running right into the football and taking off for 20 more yards. Instead, he's coming out of his break, and then there's a hesitation, and then he throws it kind of off his back foot, and it flies off into the atmosphere, and he's very lucky that it wasn't intercepted. That, to me, is a trust and confidence. It is also a haven't played a whole lot of football type of miss, and it might be a footwork or mechanics type of miss as well, because you should be hitting a certain spot with your footwork and then releasing the football, not hitting it and then kind of stopping and then drifting backward and then throwing it up in the air. There was a lot happening on plays that you almost never see a lot happening on when it came to yesterday's game. So by the numbers, his completion percentage over expected, which would factor in how open the receivers were, was 14% below what you would expect. So based on just him throwing where the receivers were when he threw the football. And this speaks to, I think, a lot of the timing, and maybe some of the drops are baked into this as well. 14% below expected, his completion percentage yesterday. And now, at this point, through 5 games, his completion percentage when adjusted for drops, so that is a stat that we have, is 36th out of 40 quarterbacks who qualify have enough dropbacks. And in terms of clean pocket completion percentage, and again, this is what is concerning, is how often he had all day to throw the football. There was nary a pressure from the Chicago Bears. Their defensive line is banged up. I believe his pressure percentage maybe was like 20-something%, which is as good as you could ever dream of in the NFL today. And now, after 5 games, he is 40th out of 40 players in completion percentage from a clean pocket, and he is at 54.8%. The top 25 quarterbacks in the league are all above 70. So he has not really been anywhere close to NFL starting caliber standard when playing from a clean pocket. That, I think, is something that through 5 games is not going to give you a perfect sample. And if you have a great game, the next one, you can bump that up by 10% or something. But if we're just looking at yesterday's game and the trend of what has been through 5 games, not being able to take advantage of time in the pocket, I think early in those first couple games, there was certainly that discussion that was warranted of, well, you're playing a backup tackle and it's Justin School and the Falcons are confusing the backup lineman. The Bears did not confuse the Vikings offensive line really at all. They tried stunts. They tried stuff like that. I thought Blake Brandel was excellent in this game. I thought Donovan Jackson was absolutely phenomenal in this game. Christian Darrisaw did a great job. CJ Ham was used on a number of different plays to be an extra blocker to deal with the rush and was great. I believe he had 6 snaps that were probably all on 3rd down and didn't allow a single pressure. I don't even think he came close to allowing a pressure. So they gave him all the opportunity in the world and the balls were just not there. And a lot of it, I think, had to do with the timing and with the mechanical parts of that. Let's see. The pocket movement as well, and this goes to mechanics, but the pocket movement overall, some of it just is confusing. It doesn't really make a lot of sense on the interception that he throws to Kevin Byard, which, of course, is another example, I think, of the ball coming out a little bit late because for some reason, McCarthy steps up into pressure and didn't need to step up to throw that football. And, of course, when you start stepping up and your eyes and your shoulders are targeting a certain way, NFL safeties like Kevin Byard he's gonna take a beeline there. He's gonna go exactly where you're headed. And that's kind of like the Malachi Starks interception against the Baltimore Ravens. So why on the Addison miss are you taking like 2 run steps forward and then throwing it when he's wide open? Why are you taking a violent, and this is something KOC mentioned, I'm not coming up with this myself, I just looked for it after O'Connell brought it up. But why are you taking a violent movement toward the line of scrimmage in a situation where you should just be able to plant and throw? And that's what is a little bit hard to figure out. And I will say that O'Connell did make me feel a little bit better about the discussion at the end of the show yesterday, because I got a lot of questions about, well, you guys all reported that he looked good in practice and training camp, and I guess you guys don't know how to watch a practice, or you were lying to us for the hype and the clicks or something, which, you know, if you listen to the show, you know that that's not something that I do. But then O'Connell said, well, he's getting this stuff right in practice. And I was like, I know, I know. And I think the big difference is there's not 70,000 people. Maybe during camp there was 2,000 out there and a handful of nerds that were watching with notebooks and tracking the throws. But that was about it. I think another part of it is the pressure that I'm sure, has started to put on himself, which is to try a little bit too hard to try to make a play. If he doesn't want to throw that ball to Addison, you could take off and run. He didn't run a single time yesterday. You could take off and run, and you could get a first down there potentially if you want to. But I think that there's a feeling, and I don't want to play psychologist. I know he would never say, oh yeah, well, it was in my head, but how could it not be? I mean, if you're a free throw shooter or something and the entire crowd is booing you because you've missed some free throws, are you feeling great about crushing that next free throw? Or are you trying to press a little bit, which I think is just natural for any athlete. But I think you can see it there, and that also the throwing and the mechanics, they go back to what they were in college and probably his entire life before this, because there's not enough time that has been spent. And I was even thinking about all of this yesterday, about the process of developing quarterbacks and how it's changed over the many years. I remember I like to reference things that Sage Rosenfels, former Viking quarterback, has told me in the past, because his knowledge is 1,000 times the normal football viewer of playing the position in the NFL, as he did for many years. And he said to me one time that if there hadn't been that third quarterback position that he was early in his career, that he wouldn't have been able to develop if he had to go in right away or very, very quickly into the NFL, that he would have probably failed, because he needed the years of development of practice. He needed the years of development in preseason where he got a ton of work. And I'm not saying that KOC should have played McCarthy 14 more plays in the preseason games, but in years past, and we're going back a ways now, but it speaks to development in the NFL overall. In years past, there were 4 preseason games, and if you were a young quarterback, you'd probably play all 4, and you'd probably play the first half of all 4. And that's just not even close to happening now, and I'm not sure you can even get anything out of it, because the other team isn't playing their players either. So you're not really getting much out of those even close to full speed or even close to high talent reps. But you would have been playing in the past 4 games, 3 of them against first teamers. That's just not happening anymore. And there used to be 2-a-day practices. And think about how hard it's always been to develop quarterbacks. There used to be so many more reps out there for this to happen in the offseason. So you have a handful of OTAs, a handful of mini camp, then you're in training camp mode and you're running the offense. You're not really, even at that point, developing. So then it's on you to develop behind the scenes, and you get a quarterback guru, which I saw McCarthy's was very mad online, I guess, yesterday. And you get one of those guys and you try to work with them, but McCarthy couldn't really work with the quarterback guru in the same way because he had the injury. And I think that's what a lot of it comes down to, is that if you want to be, a great golfer, you have to have, I'm sure, X number of times hitting your driver off the tee. And that number is probably astronomical, right? And it's, I'm sure, the same thing for a quarterback trying to adjust his mechanics and doing it on the fly, doing it at full speed. Jordan Addison in practice cannot run at the same speed that he's running in the game. It just doesn't work that way. He would run out of gas by week 7 if he practiced at full complete speed. If the defense came after you at full complete speed, right? They'll call them full speed reps, but they're not. They're not the real speed. And I think that that is what has sped up McCarthy at times in his footwork and things like that. And I think he's also, having to believe in things that aren't there is what you have to do as a quarterback. It takes a long time to get used to that. Believe in where Addison's going to be. Believe in where Jefferson's going to be and throw it to that spot. It takes a long time. And Steve Young talked about this in his A Football Life, where he said when he turned the corner in the NFL was when Mike Holmgren told him that you're not going to be able to see it before you throw it. You just have to throw it and believe it's going to be there. And that's not where JJ McCarthy is yet as a quarterback. That's kind of the takeaway there. Now, can it be fixed is really the question. The things that we saw yesterday, the throws that are late, the throws that are just flat out errant, the footwork that's kind of all over the place, the stepping up in the pocket that's troublesome, like, can it be fixed? And my answer would be not tomorrow, not a week from now, and not probably 5 weeks from now. But what you want to see is him making progress. And I think that one of the things that got me about yesterday was that the week before, all of these things happened against Baltimore. And then he was put in the most favorable position you could ever be put in. KOC called a great game. He played off the run really, really well. Really well. They ran excellently all game long. So they were in favorable situations. They were not, for the most part, losing the game by a lot of points. They weren't down by 20 or something. It was a fairly close game through a major part of it. The receivers were there. The offensive line was there. And I like put the drops aside when I say that, but it was a favorable situation against a horrible defense, a defense that is 28th in points allowed in the NFL in Chicago, a defense that Jackson Dart with no receivers lit up the week before, and to still not even clear 50%, to get to only 50% and not clear that and not have a fairly big day against that team. That's where you think there is a longer way to go than any of us would have had after 5 games. Now, I have seen a lot. I'll get back to the fix thing. I've seen a lot. Well, it's only 5 games. It's only 5 games. And you're right. It is only 5 games. And we'll get to that bigger picture. But through 5 games, I did a little math here, over the last 20 years. So I looked at quarterbacks in their first 5 starts over the last 20 years, and they had to have at least 100 passes. So it's not like, random people entering games 5 times, like 5, at least over 100 passes. And in terms of completion percentage, JJ McCarthy is 94th out of 113 quarterbacks and 92nd in quarterback rating. Some of those QB rating quarterbacks worked out. You do have Josh Allen, who's mixed in there. Some of them were from 20 years ago that worked out, like Joe Flacco, kind of a different league at that point. That is where, when we talk about the roller coaster, the expectation for a roller coaster is that you're going to have the high moments. And there has not been a single complete game yet played through 5 weeks. It has not been a roller coaster. It's just been it started out pretty well against Chicago in the fourth quarter, and it's been, there's some spikes against Detroit, but it's not major spikes. It's not, okay, wow, he threw for 280 and 4 touchdowns or something. That's more of a bump. This is one of those kiddie coasters that stays low to the ground. Like, this has not been a way up and then way down. And those are the parts that make you start talking about where this is headed. I think if you're the person who's declaring it one way or the other, you've gone too far, because his inexperience and because 5 games does not tell us what a quarterback is going to be. And there's a lot of time to go still in this season. He has more games to play the rest of the way than he's already played by a lot. So there's still a lot of work to be done here with 7 games left to go for JJ McCarthy, and a lot of sample size to still build on. There was a lot of moments with Jordan Love when he first started, or Bo Nix when he first started early on, that people thought this guy's a bust. I even, in college, it's driven me crazy with, Arch Manning and how, everyone wanted to call him a bust after his first game with Ohio State or whatever. Like, we don't have to do that. We don't have to do that with JJ McCarthy here. We really need to see it play out in a much bigger sample size. But I also think if you're burying your head in the sand and you're saying, no, this is just how it goes with young quarterbacks, it's not really, not to this level. No, not to 94th out of 113 and not 36th out of 40 quarterbacks in adjusted quarterback rating. That is not a level that you have seen a lot of successful quarterbacks in the last even 10 years have in their first 5 games. So there is some element of a sample size here that we are now working with that is very concerning. And I think the only answer is to continue to play JJ McCarthy. The Brosmer people, I respect you. I appreciate you. And I agree with you that Max Brosmer at this moment is farther along than JJ McCarthy. And I think could very well have a great career ahead of him. So I'm not negative or down on Max Brosmer at all, but you spent the 10th overall pick on McCarthy. He has tremendous athleticism. He has tremendous arm strength, and you need to find out how far that's going to go. And I did want to bring up the end of the game and his final drive there. I thought that some of it was just favorable from the Bears. There were a couple short underneath passes that worked for him that I think you'd like to see him make more often, honestly. The really nice pass on a Jalen Nailor out route where Nailor had the guy beat and he delivers it on time. I thought the touchdown was a really great velocity throw, but I wasn't sure that's where the ball was supposed to go. I don't know the plays. So just in terms of the velo on that ball, though, that's when you need to fit it into a tight window. And he didn't have a ton of space there and let it rip, and it's a touchdown. And, I do think there's a resilience to JJ McCarthy. And, I'm sure that people have made fun of the whole 9 thing and everything else, but I do think he has the right mentality for this overall. And Kevin O'Connell talked about his post-game press conference where, I've seen many quarterbacks in the past. I'll just give an example of one that did not play here. Zach Wilson. When you would listen to Zach Wilson after games when he was a young quarterback, you thought, the heck is this guy's deal? I mean, did he see the game? To quote Mike Zimmer, did you see the game? But that was not JJ McCarthy. I mean, he came out and he said, that absolutely sucked. And he said that, it was on him and he needs to improve the accuracy and everything else. So also if you're throwing your body in front of McCarthy, it's like, listen to that post game and how critical he was of himself. But O'Connell talked about that element of it for JJ McCarthy.
When you hear JJ taking accountability the way he did after the game, just how does that hit you, and how did you then apply that and translate that to growth from practice into a game?
Yeah, to me, that falls right in line with the intangibles of how he was able to get it done at the end of the game. I mean, he's never going to turn it down. He's never going to turn the work down, mentally or physically. This is just, to me, it's a consistency factor and discipline of some very, very simple things that we're working very hard to make translate in those competitive moments where you get one opportunity a week and 54 plays yesterday. How many of those were in the 2-minute mode? How many of those were in normal football? How many of those were on third down? You're just trying to get him to understand that every single snap, his detail and his job is of the utmost importance. I thought he had some really great protection calls yesterday. It's a defense that had really, really activated some problems for people, free runners left and right, in some zone pressures, and he was able to navigate what was a pretty intricate protection plan and with precision, and that was all pre-snap, just like a lot of the things he's been able to be prepared to do in his high capacity pre-snap. We just have to find that when it comes to the post-snap. And sometimes it's not even reads and progressions. It's simply just the fundamental foundation that we need to start seeing the concrete kind of dry a little bit on the work that's put in.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to frame it, the concrete drying on the work that's put in. And at this moment, all the hours that have gone into make it a golf lesson again, the driving range, are just not translating to the course. And the question is, will it ever, and how long is that going to take? But as far as the bigger picture to this, I think that you have the rest of this way to go. And McCarthy has shown you a couple of things that you have to like. Number one is some very high-end plays, some great athleticism running for touchdowns, some incredible arm strength on the velocity on throws into coverage or into tight windows or into the end zone, like last week against the Ravens, where he's even had touch on the football. He's even shown some of those. So he's shown enough of the highlight stuff to want to give this more time. But the problem is that, one, how much time can you actually give it if you are the Vikings with a roster this good, which I felt like yesterday was the healthiest that they've ever been outside of Jonathan Grenard being out. We'll get to that with Dallas Turner. But it was the healthiest that they've been in a long time. And we saw the full version of the Minnesota Vikings almost yesterday, and it wasn't enough from the quarterback to win the game. So are you going to give it how much time? I mean, do you get to the end of this year if it looks like the rest of these games? Are you going into next year looking for another quarterback to bring in, or how far does he have to go? Where is the bar get set? Like, these conversations after 3 or 4 games to me were too far out. But as concerning as it was to play against a defense that poor and look like that, I think it now is a time where you start to say, all right, what do you need to see? How far along can you get? And just to go back a little bit to the whole quarterback development thing and how much harder it is these days, I think what we have to see is quarterbacks developing in real time on the field, because that's the only time that they can get these types of reps. And over these next 7 games, everything in the Vikings organization is about JJ McCarthy and how far he can develop, and if he can look like by the end of the year a starting quarterback that you want to go forward with. And I think it's possible for him to get much, much closer to that because the opportunities are there. The throws are there to be made. And there could be a light comes on type of moment, or maybe not ever be perfectly accurate. And if he flies some throws into the stands, I don't think that's what anybody is that worried about. It's really when it happens at the type of volume with the mechanical elements of it. If he just missed, you'd go, well, okay. I mean, young quarterback, he just missed. But some of the footwork stuff and some of the throws that were missed, wildly overthrowing Jefferson on that 7-yard out route, I mean, that's just not pro level. It's just not. And he has to get, I think, to a point where you're saying, okay, this is a pro level type of performance that needs refining. By the end of the season, if you get to that, then it will have gone, I think, a long way from where it is right now. So the idea that we all know or don't know yet, I think we have a sample size that you cannot ignore. And so if you're putting your fingers in your ears and saying, it's only 5 games, well, it's 5 games with very little to write home about. And you're starting to get into that space of, the guys who have thrown this many interceptions and the guys who have this completion percentage and you're starting to get into some concerning territory with the comparables historically from what you've seen through 5 games. At the same time, if you're trying to call it and say it's over, he's a bust, he's terrible, they should move on, whatever, I still think that you're out ahead of yourself. These next 2 games are going to tell us a lot. They are as tough as it gets. Lambeau Field, great Packers defense. Their defensive coordinator, Jeff Hafley, throws all sorts of stuff at the opposing quarterback. Micah Parsons is quite possibly the best player in the entire NFL. And then the following week out to Seattle, which, maybe you can beat Seattle if Sam Darnold has a tough game against Brian Flores' defense. I could 100% see that and see some of the same mistakes that he made against the Rams. At the same time, that defense for Seattle just did a really good job against Matthew Stafford, who's looked like the league MVP for half of the season. So these next 2 tests are going to be as challenging as you have in the NFL, and the resilience of JJ McCarthy is truly going to be tested. So I don't want to get to a point where we're 5 games in and we're just saying, all right, it's over. Who's the quarterback for next year? I'm not there. But in terms of red flags, things that are very worrisome, looks on Kevin O'Connell's body language throughout the game, the way he's talking about it of like, it looks good in practice and what else can we kind of do? Like, he didn't say what else can we do, but you could sort of feel that in his voice. Like, what else can we do? You ran the ball, got the receivers wide open, and you just need to do it. So that's kind of where I come out for him. Let me get you a couple more notes and then we'll get to your questions. And then at 7:30, Brian Murphy and Manny Hill will be on the way. Brian Flores had a really interesting plan to go after Caleb Williams, and I thought it was really effective. He used a lot of corner blitzes. Byron Murphy blitzed 5 times. If Brian Murphy blitzed 5 times, he would come nowhere close. But Byron did. There was one where Jay Ward blitzed and he should have had Caleb Williams, but the guy is a magician. It was an incredible play to get out of that, but that was an effective blitz for them. So that was a game plan that I hadn't really seen them use before. And I thought that it caused some problems for Caleb Williams, and he didn't gain a ton of yards on the ground. He didn't gain a ton of yards throwing down the field when he was using those escapes. The Vikings were bailed out a little bit by a couple drops from his wide receivers as well. I don't know what was going on in US Bank Stadium yesterday. Maybe the footballs were cold. I don't know, but that helped them a little bit. But I thought overall, very good defensive performance there. Dallas Turner, it was as good as you thought. Watching it back, PFF gave him 5 pressures. He also made a great play on a screen where he kind of sniffed it out and didn't drift back and just accelerated and hit Luther Burden. I would call this the best game of Dallas Turner's career, and I don't think that it was a mistake that it happened while he was filling in for Jonathan Grenard. There was a lot of straight up rushing. There was times where he got some help. I mean, this is a thing for playing the 3-4 defense. He was playing an outside linebacker in a 3-4 type of look where Jalen Redmond, Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave are all out there, and he got some matchups against the tight end. And he won those matchups. And I know you could say, oh, well, congratulations, you got a pressure. But, that's something that look and Brian Flores is looking for. And he was able to create pressure on a couple of those. He straight up crushed the left tackle on one pressure, should have had a sack. He had Caleb in the grass, but then the tackle kind of fell on him and he escaped and made a bad throw. But it was a really good game for Dallas Turner. And he's shown enough this year to say that there's been pretty significant progress. Is he a superstar yet? Of course not. But significant progress, some very impressive games. And, I was looking at the stats today. The Vikings are 8th in defensive expected points added. Oh, the corners I thought were really good in this game overall. Just Fabian Moreau has done a good job since stepping in. Murphy, Isaiah Rodgers, even though he took a heck of a hit there, had, I think, one of his better games overall. Murphy is one of his better games overall. Sticky in coverage in a lot of plays, didn't give Caleb Williams a lot of places to throw the football. So they were very good there against a tough receiving unit. So the Vikings defense is now 8th in defensive expected points added, which is crazy because they've had almost no turnovers just against Cincinnati and then have not had much since then. I mean, it's crazy where you have Williams just drop the ball and it gets kicked and he dives on it. I mean, how many times has that happened? The Ravens were trying a play like that, and the ball bounced right back up into Zay Flowers' chest. Maybe if there's a case for turning things around, maybe they'll go from, I think, what do they have, 9 turnovers to like 20 in the coming weeks and just get a bunch of Jordan Love and Sam Darnold interceptions or something and win some surprising games just because of regression. It's crazy how the turnovers from last year have just disappeared, even though they've been creating pressure on the quarterback. And one more thing, last thing that I noticed is on the kick return, Kevin O'Connell's explanation. I know some people were saying kick it out of the back of the end zone. I don't know why you would do that. The Chicago Bears would be celebrating if you kicked it out of the back of the end zone. They would be like, what? Thank you. The 35-yard line with 50 seconds and 3 timeouts? Yeah, take that all day long. What they wouldn't want is if they were tackled at the 23 and had to use 7 seconds or something. But what happened was the Vikings got a little over aggressive on the right side, and sometimes the other team is smart. Earlier in the game, there was a very similar play and they were close. And so they had their fullback type of guy, the other returner, second returner, shoot all the way out wide, and they let the player on the right side come very aggressively inside. And as soon as he sort of declared that he was slamming down inside a little too hard, they broke to the outside and made a great play. It's been a really good unit so far this year. I agree with Kevin O'Connell. I think that was trying to blame, something on O'Connell for this game. Like for those people who every single week just, have to give him a hard time for something. And I'm not saying that all the critiques were wrong, but in this game, it was like, okay, we got nothing else. So special teams decision. No, that it wasn't the wrong call. It was not the wrong call. Kicking it out of bounds would not have made a whole lot of logical sense. It makes much more sense to have your very good unit stop him. And they were not able to do that. So anyway, all right, let's get to some thoughts, questions, comments. I'll scroll back up a little bit. I know I was, you guys have been commenting a lot, and I have been going through all of my notes, but I wanted to make sure that I got everything out there that I was thinking, and we'll go from there. Thank you very much to Sean for the super chat. Really appreciate that. Said, I'm tired of the Josh Allen early career comps. Allen at least had epic athletic moments that could give you hope. JJ doesn't possess that ability. Well, here's the thing about those comps is that did anybody ever kind of get tired of, hey, this guy who never sacked anybody in college could be Danielle Hunter? Danielle Hunter is a once in a lifetime type of outlier, right? And it just doesn't happen a whole heck of a lot that you see, somebody like Josh Allen come along. I mean, how many quarterbacks ever have been like Josh Allen? I would say, you go way back, way back, like Otto Graham. Otto Graham was so much better of an athlete than anybody else on the field. That's probably where I'd start. I know that's like way back, but you could go through any time in history where maybe like a Terry Bradshaw, early in Terry Bradshaw's career, he's pretty terrible. And yeah, this huge arm and was an amazing athlete and everything. And then as the team got better, Terry Bradshaw got better. My point is that there's only a handful of guys that you can ever find in history that started off like Josh Allen and then turned it around. John Elway by his second year was really good. It's that kind of historic level athleticism though. Someone like John Elway. I don't think that that's JJ McCarthy either. I don't think that he's a 99.999 percentile athlete like Josh Allen. And I do think though, here's where the comp does make some sense, is that Allen's problem was the same, which was really just throwing it way too hard. That is one of the problems. Now, I didn't watch all of Josh Allen's games in 2018. I'll say that I did not. So I don't know if he had this problem with slow processing, but I think he did. So, I think that there's some element of, okay, well, Josh Allen is maybe not a fair comp because he's an outlier and also became the best. But if McCarthy becomes good following a similar path or a more consistent following a similar path, it doesn't have to be top of the mountain or nothing with his improvement. So I think there is some proof of the idea that you can become a better touch passer, a better technical passer, and some proof of the idea that you can get better control over the football. But saying he's going to become Josh Allen is probably too much. I mean, he is a good athlete and he has a really, really good arm. I don't think those things are on the level of Allen. And remember, his running is legitimately historic. He's like the best running quarterback of all time. It's him, Randall Cunningham, Michael Vick, and Cam Newton are like the Steve McNair. Like these are the best running back. Hurts is up there now. Like best running quarterbacks of all time. Josh Allen is way up on that list. That's not where JJ McCarthy is. So that helped guide him through a lot of those tough times as well. Ryan, thank you so much for the huge super chat. Really appreciate that. Did KOC and Kwesi miscalculate by not signing Aaron Rodgers and opening the McCarthy mystery box a season early? I mean, I think that we can very clearly say, if you want to talk about conclusions, we can very clearly say with no hesitation whatsoever now, because their playoff odds are, I'll look them up on FanDuel. I'll look up the Vikings playoff odds. Where are they at? Plus 1260 to make the playoffs now. So that's worse than Dallas. Yeah, okay. We can pretty clearly say when your odds are plus 1260 to make the playoffs through 10 games that yes, you miscalculated the whole timeline being built around this year with JJ McCarthy with this team. And as much as they wanted Daniel Jones, I know they wanted Daniel Jones to stay here. The Darnold thing was more complex. The Darnold thing is more complex because you also have a franchise tag that would have been so expensive. Now, you could have afforded Rodgers. You could have afforded Daniel Jones. I think that had they truly understood where McCarthy was going to be, and remember what KOC has said about practice and what I've said about practice, is that when that's your only sample size, you felt pretty good about it. KOC watched him practice in 2024 and came out saying he's a franchise quarterback. Like it's not a lie that he's looked really good in practice. And that's what actually gives you some belief that there could be a turnaround here. And by, 2026, he could start to really have it click in, is that it is there. It does happen. It just has not happened with any level of consistency in the games. But I think if they knew that, if they knew what it was going to really look like in the games, then yes, they would have signed Aaron Rodgers, or they would have said to Daniel Jones, you are our starting quarterback for next year. Even if they didn't, put that out loud, but that would have caused a lot of problems. You guys have to understand that too, is that would have caused a lot of problems, because if Daniel Jones came out and Justin School was his left tackle and they had some rough patches and everything else and lost some games, then the cheers for JJ McCarthy would have been enormous. And I think Daniel Jones understood that, I'm going to be an upgrade over Anthony Richardson, no doubt. And the fans have seen Anthony Richardson be bad and are not going to call for my head, even if I'm mediocre. So Daniel Jones, no fool. He understood. Plus he probably checked out that division and said, it's a lot easier than the NFC North. So I think all those things factored in too. But yeah, I mean, if they had known what they know now, I think they probably would have gone with Aaron Rodgers, because this team would likely be like 6-4 with him. Do I think that is the best outcome? I mean, that's kind of to be determined, right? I mean, through all this scar tissue, it might be JJ McCarthy figures it out because he's getting a chance to play. Like that might be something that helps him, is as long as he doesn't get hurt, he's getting all these real reps. But I also think when we're talking about mechanics behind the scenes would have been a lot better for him, I think. So let's see. S and a lot of ends-able says draft a guy because QB wins are a stat, but he can't even throw the ball. We drafted Tim Tebow. Sadly, the some of the numbers for completion percentage do look Tebow-like. Tebow ended up with a 47.9 or 8 completion percentage for his career. McCarthy's currently at 52, so it's not as far off as you'd like it to be. And then he has a lot of the boxes. See, I don't think we're at the point yet where we could start going over totally the process in the draft, but you only had 2 quarterbacks to pick, and the other one's 9-2 right now, and has won 19 of his 28 starts and has already been to the playoffs, and is the least sacked quarterback in the NFL, was the least sacked quarterback in college, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think Bo Nix is John Elway, but he's playing with a really good team and winning. That was the idea that was supposed to happen here, right? And so I think for the timeline, Bo Nix was probably a better fit. What they decided to do in their mind was go with higher upside, which I think you could see in McCarthy's skill set that he probably does have a higher upside than Bo Nix. I think that O'Connell also went with the quarterback that clicked with him the most, which was JJ McCarthy. And those two are going to have to communicate for at least 4 years or whatever is your projection. Through the rookie contract at least. Well, you want to pick someone that you're on the same page with. The draft is also a mystery and always will be. Just when it comes to quarterbacks or any other position, we've gone over that many times. But I think if you were going back and looking at that pick, a major part of the plan was sitting behind Sam Darnold and developing for an entire year that he didn't get. So that has to be factored in when we just look at this and say, well, they could have picked that guy. They should have picked that guy. It's true. It's absolutely true that, there could be some questions there about fitting with when you needed that player to come in and when you needed that player to be good. And the college statistics are so different between those two. The number of passes was so different. So you can ask that question. You certainly can. And, for me, I liked all the 2024 quarterbacks. I know you guys, some of you have been listening long enough to remember how in depth we tried to go breaking them down. But at the end of the day, I kept coming to the conclusion of as long as they get one, then we'll see, because you never really know. And I don't think we have the conclusion through 5 games, but we do know that if you want to talk timeline, because that was the question about the timeline and maybe keeping a veteran quarterback instead. Yeah, it's a miss. It's a miss. And it's right there in the standings. There's no arguing it. It is a MISS. They missed on the timeline of when McCarthy was going to be good. and when they were going to peak as a roster, because the roster we saw yesterday was awesome. That's a great roster we saw yesterday. It's great pass protection. The receivers needed some work, but they were open a lot of the game. The defense played really well. They've corrected a lot of the stuff. I know they had that one long drive where they got run over, but at the end of the day, they average 3.8 yards per carry. I mean, it's a really good team, and it's not a quarterback that right now can maximize that. So I think if you're questioning it, it's probably that. That's probably the biggest thing, because you needed to hit on that. Now, I will say, to their credit, they did not say it is Super Bowl or bust. I did not say it was Super Bowl or bust. I remember looking at, I think it was Jeremy Fowler, who said in the offseason that he had been told or something like that, that the Vikings were looking at as a 3-year type of window with McCarthy's rookie contract. And when you go through player by player, a lot of these guys are going to be back next year. It's a very high percentage of the roster is going to return. So it feels to me more like a 2-year, because I don't think you could look 3 years in the NFL. I think that's impossible, but it feels more like a 2-year window to me, which puts a ton of pressure on 2026. For me, the expectation for this year was you should be very good. I don't expect you to be ready to win the Super Bowl, but you should be good. You should be in the conversation for the NFC North. You should be in the playoffs. And when I look at the roster that they have and the way that they've played the last couple weeks, they've been a team that, I mean, even you go back to Philadelphia with Carson Wentz, you're 1 for 6 in the red zone. You should have a chance to win that game. You look at these last couple weeks, the Ravens didn't play that great. You have a chance to win that game. And then this week, my goodness, Chicago is not good at all. I don't think Chicago's good at all. Somebody said in the comments, I'm sorry, I missed who it was. Chicago's going to finish 9-8. I could totally see that. Chicago is just not a deep team on defense. Caleb Williams, I thought, had some real amazing moments, but I think he also had some pretty bleh moments, and their run game had some, okay. Their offensive line, I think, is pretty good, but I don't think that's a 12-win team or anything. And the victory is right there to be had with a couple of throws. So, it hasn't matched up with what they expected. And this is the risk you take, though. When you bring in Rodgers, my issue with bringing in Rodgers, and here's the thing, I'll say this about the Rodgers deal. You would rather win 6 games with JJ McCarthy and know a lot about JJ McCarthy than win 10 games with Aaron Rodgers, get bounced in the first round of the playoffs, and know nothing about JJ McCarthy. I will say that. That I would stick with. I don't think that the Rodgers deal was ever a good idea. Daniel Jones, I think, would have made a little more sense to at least give you some buffer there. But we always figured that this was possible, that there could be an outcome like this, where he's just much farther behind than we expected. And the positive part of that is that you now know, and you know everything that you're seeing with him, as opposed to, hey, I guess it's 2026 for JJ McCarthy after a 9-8 season where they missed the playoffs with Aaron Rodgers. That would have been much, much worse. So from my perspective here, yeah, they missed on the timeline and how far he was going to be, but also learning about him is better than knowing nothing and going into 2026 with an all-in type of approach. So, let's see. Judd thinks that they're going to fire people. That's Judd. Look, I think if you are the ownership of this team and the timeline was presented to you as 2025, 2026, then you should go with that. I guarantee you that the ownership of this team sitting at 4-6, knowing what I've heard from Mark Wilf in the past, sitting down with him at the owners' meetings as part of, a contingent that goes to that, or the times that he's talked here in the Twin Cities, winning is very important. And there is not a patience element to it's fine if you win 7 or it's fine if you win 6. I'm not saying that they are overreactionary when it comes to that, but missing the playoffs is not something that's just accepted and gets a thumbs up. Great job me just saying that. Great job finding out about JJ McCarthy as we win 6 games. That's not okay. I don't think they're in a position where heads have to roll. And it's actually funny now how after yesterday, a lot of the offseason moves look pretty darn good. They just need the quarterback to complete a pass. I mean, Eric Wilson has played well. Hargrave has improved. Allen has looked pretty good recently. Even Dallas Turner playing better. Aaron Jones has looked like the old Aaron Jones. Played a great game yesterday. Man, Will Fries was good. I wrote that in my notes. I forgot to say it. Will Fries, beast, played awesome yesterday. Dominant football. So a lot of those moves are looking okay, but I don't think that we need to do that. And I think we do that way too often in sports. If something goes wrong, it's like, well, who's got to get fired? This is a situation where they have pushed their chips to the middle of the table on this plan. And a lot of parts of it, I think, are going okay on the roster. But the part that matters the most is farther behind than they needed it to be. So the rest of this year is about figuring out how close you can get and what your contingency plan needs to be if you don't get there. I made a mistake. I did not give you the FanDuel question of the day. So let me give it to you. FanDuel question of the day. I'm going to divert a little bit from Vikings here. Who are your legitimate Super Bowl contenders after yesterday? The Rams, for me, pushed to the top of the list. Who the heck's idea was it to give Jalen Phillips to the Philadelphia Eagles? Thank you, Dolphins. Oh my gosh, he has been fantastic. When we look at the Super Bowl odds on FanDuel, the Eagles are now the favorite at plus 500. The Rams are plus 650. And the Buffalo Bills and Josh Allen, what a game yesterday for them, plus 800. Kansas City, who's not even in the playoffs right now, still plus 1,000, the fourth highest odds. Indianapolis after that, plus 1,000 as well. Then Detroit, Seattle, Baltimore, Denver cannot get much respect, and Green Bay at plus 1,500. So who are your legitimate Super Bowl contenders? All right. As you guys know, every week. Oh, I'm sorry. We got another super chat. Try not to miss those. From John here. Wish the best for the kid, but the Pastronaut has great highlights too. Looks a lot more like mechanics and those terrible throws. What does he do consistently besides saying my bad? Yeah, that is harsh, my friend. And thank you again for the super chat and the support. Really, really appreciate that. Not required at all by the show here to get questions and comments in, but always thankful for those of you who want to contribute to the cause. What does he do well? Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing is he does a lot of things well, but not consistently, as you're saying. And consistency is the key to everything. There's a lot of golfers who drive the fairway at 350 yards, but they are not on the tour because they don't do it consistently. And there's a lot of quarterbacks in the past who have had strong arms and great mentalities and character, and they were the best, but you couldn't go out there and execute on a play-to-play basis. And that's what it comes down to a lot of times. I mean, KOC laid it out as simply as it could be yesterday, and it just didn't work for JJ McCarthy. So it's a harsh criticism, but I also think that you make a fair point. I mean, if people are raising red flags right now, I mean, who can say that that's wrong of them to do? All right, so each Monday night we have Brian Murphy and Manny Hill, which I'll take a second to get those guys in here. And then we will have a discussion with the panel about where they're at now and what it means to have had JJ McCarthy play the way that he did. My answer, by the way, to the FanDuel question of the day is I think the Buffalo Bills and Los Angeles Rams and Philadelphia Eagles are the three teams that I think can truly win the Super Bowl. And I'm not sure anybody else in the AFC has made a good enough argument, except for if Denver had a great defensive performance against Buffalo, maybe they could do it. So that's my answer to the FanDuel question of the day. And now to the round table. Good evening, Mr. Manny Hill. What is going on, my friend? How are you?
I am pretty good. How about you?
Oh, it's been a day. Brian Murphy, how are we, sir?
Gentlemen, always a pleasure.
Let's begin with what I was just talking about with JJ McCarthy, and I kind of I hem and haw a little bit over the question about the timeline. I think at 4-6, you can pretty clearly say that you whiffed on the idea that he could come in and win games right away. I am seeing a lot of goalpost movers, and I am not okay with that. Like, I am not that person who's going to say, well, this year was always about developing McCarthy. The hell it was. The hell it was. After 14 wins last year, and after them calling him the franchise quarterback and all that sort of stuff, the things we've seen behind the scenes are the reason we believe in moving on from McCarthy. No way is anybody get to say this year was just about developing McCarthy. They were supposed to win, and we know that. But should we be, Manny, looking at this and saying, all right, well, yes, you're not going to win, but had you brought back Darnold, had you signed Aaron Rodgers, had you gotten Daniel Jones and didn't give him opportunities to play and develop, would that be worse if you didn't really win? Like they're in kind of a conundrum there where you are getting something out of this, even in the form of negative information, but at least you're getting negative information out of this, where if you had Daniel Jones and won 9 games or Aaron Rodgers, then you wouldn't have gotten much out of this. I feel like it's a tricky thing to sort your way through.
Yeah, and I'll admit that I was somebody in the offseason when there were still some conversations about maybe bringing Sam Darnold back or trying to find a way to keep Daniel Jones to try and compete with JJ McCarthy. I was one, you remember this, that was saying they don't necessarily have to go to JJ McCarthy in 2025, because he's coming off a season in which he didn't play at all. He didn't really practice at all because of the injury and being on IR. So you don't necessarily have to rush him out there in 2025. But the decision was made to go to him, and then that freed up a lot of cap space because you didn't use a franchise tag on Sam Darnold. You had that money to spend on other parts of the team that needed to be addressed, like the offensive line, like the defensive line, like with, at cornerback going and getting Isaiah Rodgers. But the tricky part is, to your point, the McCarthy is not as far along as they anticipated. They were banking on him having, a year in the league under his belt, even though he really didn't do a lot last year. They were banking on him just being able to be sort of this plug and play, young quarterback that needs work to grow and develop, but just plug him in with all of these new toys that we went and got in the offseason and the first round draft pick guard that we got. We address all the offensive needs, but he's just not there yet. And if you would have went and, kept Sam Darnold or kept Daniel Jones, the biggest problem, and I don't know if you talked about this before me and Murph jumped on, but I think one of the biggest issues would have been that first interception that Darnold or Jones throws, or that first bad game, that first 3 turnover game. We saw Sam had a 4-pick game yesterday. The moment Sam Darnold has a game like that in a Vikings uniform this year, all of the fans and everybody's going to be pounding the table to put JJ McCarthy in. They were pounding the table for JJ McCarthy last year during the Jacksonville game, and McCarthy wasn't even going to be able to actually come into the game. And you had people online saying, "Oh, I can't wait to go to JJ McCarthy next year." Well, that puts them in a tough spot. And the other part of this too is you have the fact that McCarthy is not as far along as they hoped. You're also dealing with a much more difficult schedule than what you're not playing the AFC South this year. So that's been a trickier thing too. So I just say all that to say that this is the situation that they're in now, and now you just have to turn your focus on just trying to get McCarthy to improve as much as humanly possible, because it is really vital that he continues to grow and develop, because if he doesn't, then you're going to be in a really, really tough situation as a franchise whenever that time comes, when you figure out exactly what you have in him.
Yeah, I think in a theoretical world, it would make total sense to do, you and I talked about it a lot, because I thought there was a realistic possibility they could franchise tag Sam Darnold, that they could bring him back. In a theoretical world, it makes the most sense. Okay, you've got Darnold, see how this year plays out, develop McCarthy behind the scenes, learn about McCarthy, teach him to throw a football the right way throughout all of those scout team reps and everything else. And then you move on for him after that, and then you spend the money in that free agency period and so forth. But in a realistic world where the criticism ramps up very quickly to the point where McCarthy's being booed off the field yesterday, and the entire talking head universe is calling him a bust at this point after 5 games, it's very hard to say that if Sam Darnold had struggles and they had the tougher schedule, didn't have the defensive performance, didn't get the turnovers of last year, didn't play the garbage teams of last year, that they would be anything more than maybe 6-4. And people would be saying, well, why keep going with this? You're not going to win the Super Bowl. Let us see McCarthy and learn about him. So you're a little bit darned if you do and darned if you don't. Murph, where do you stand on a little bit of a different subject here? So if you want to talk about that, you can. But just the response you've seen from Kevin O'Connell about McCarthy in these last couple of games. And it does strike me when he said he had a great practice week last week. And I've been saying this, he looked really good at practice and training camp. I don't think he was perfect. I don't think he was as good as, Sam Darnold or Kirk Cousins in their training camps, but I thought there was a lot there. And I remember thinking, let's pick 11 games to be how many they win, because I think he can do it. And it just hasn't been what we've seen. But how do you think O'Connell has navigated this so far, Murph?
Well, I think he's done with feathering the nest. I don't think there's that much more leeway he can give McCarthy publicly before the credibility gap explodes. Because right now he's towing the line between not destroying his confidence while also trying to acknowledge what we can all see with our naked eyes. So it's there. And I don't expect him to come out and say at 4-6, we're done, because that's clearly counterproductive and just not in the DNA of any coach. But I'm pretty sure in the back of his mind, and pretty sure in the back of everyone's mind in the organization, this is a lost season. And if they somehow go on a run of 5 or 6 wins, I see no indication that that's going to happen after 10 so far. But let's say that does happen, then it's all gravy and it's all house money, and it's all beneficial to McCarthy, clearly. But right now the entire focus of the season is developing McCarthy, or finding out whether you cannot develop him, whether or not there really is a ceiling here that he is banging his head on. I'm trying to be as gracious as I can, because there's so much riding on this. It's not as simple as just flinging him aside, because flinging him aside essentially damages him and probably ruins any chance that he'll have to succeed in Minnesota. Doesn't necessarily mean he can't succeed somewhere else. It also pretty much says to the world that Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah didn't really know what they were talking about. So they sold us a lemon. They sold us the lemon that was, this team can compete and make the playoffs, and maybe even go on a run in the playoffs while McCarthy is still on the assembly line. And that has been proven to not be feasible. It's not viable right now. Kevin Seifert had a great line in his story today. Both of those worlds, those two tensions we're talking about, they're cannibalizing themselves right now. There really is no pathway forward unless to get to the playoffs with McCarthy being out of the way. There doesn't seem to be a path forward for that. So what we're doing now is concentrating on getting his feet right, his eyes right, his decision-making right, and his accuracy right. This is as back to the basics as it gets, and it's usually not much of a runway in the NFL for that. Maybe your first training camp, maybe your first preseason. We're 18 months into this, and granted, he's lost a lot of time because of injury, but if the basics, hitting your open receivers because they've been schemed open by a coach who's doing everything he can to make it easy for you, including kickstarting the running game, the pass protection was there. The pieces were in place with a vulnerable opponent at home to finally right size. And McCarthy couldn't do it. If anything, he's regressing every time he's out there. So O'Connell's saying the right things, but he's on the clock right now because there's not much more he can really wring out of this. Let's pat him on the head and protect JJ. Just a real quick thing. A flip side to this is to see how Ben Johnson's handled Caleb Williams. I mean, Caleb Williams was a mess last year. all indications where he didn't take a lot of coaching. Johnson's been pretty harsh on him, or at least hasn't given him a lot of leeway as far as how he's controlled the offense, and he's still challenging him to stay within his means. So you've got a contrast here. You've got one coach who's doing everything he can to shroud and protect McCarthy from the firestorm, the justifiable firestorm that's out there. You have the opponent yesterday who was picked 9 spots ahead of McCarthy, and you have a coach that's kind of like calling him on the carpet a little bit publicly, and I'm sure behind the scenes, to stick with the plan. So you have both of these operations going. One seems to be succeeding. I don't know how much longer McCarthy can be sugarcoated here.
Well, I think with Kevin O'Connell, he is the right personality to work through this while being positive about his quarterback. And I don't think that means not coaching him. I think that that's just how Kevin O'Connell is always going to be a coach. I don't think he's a screaming lunatic. I don't think he's a bully behind the scenes with his quarterback or anything else like that. I think that he is sort of a forever type of optimist that always thinks that he could fix these things. And sometimes that he thought he could fix the Pastronaut. And, that couldn't really do that either. Like, because the pure throwing ability for Josh Dobbs wasn't there. And I know Manny's the world's biggest Josh Dobbs fan, but at some point, it's like, well, this guy's probably not going to be able to execute.
I was very skeptical when they traded for him.
Yes.
Though. I was like, I love him, but
yes, you were. And then
gonna work.
And then every one of us after 2 games was like, ooh, maybe he's the bridge quarterback. That actually turned out to be Sam Darnold, who also had been bad for most of his career. So you never really do know with these quarterbacks. But I think all O'Connell can really do the rest of the way is put him in positions that every single starting quarterback in the league that's above average could make. And I thought there were 10 throws yesterday where if you're an above average quarterback in the league, I could just drop in, let me just throw in, okay, I've got Dak Prescott, and I'm just going to go, boop, we'll use AI, and we'll replace Dak Prescott for JJ McCarthy. How often does he hit that throw? And the answer is 90% of the time. Let's drop in Justin Herbert. Let's drop in the lowest level of franchise quarterback that you could think of, and does he hit some of these plays? And the answer would have been yes for most of those quarterbacks, and that's what makes it so concerning. But also, he has to not lose his mind, as coaches often do, because there could be a turnaround as we go down the stretch. I don't think that's happening in these next 2 games. In fact, I think if McCarthy gets through them and is healthy, then that's a win, because sometimes he has a tendency to run himself into pressure. But if you get into the Washington game, you get into the Giants game where Abdul Carter's just falling asleep and not going to meetings, you get into the Dallas game, it's the worst defense in the league. Like, there is a time where you could see it. But I think what makes that argument harder is that Chicago's just as bad defensively as those teams, and he couldn't do it. So, I do think that O'Connell is handling it probably the best he could. But Manny, my opinion on the post game yesterday was, and some people liked it, some people didn't, run the whole offense the way you want to run it. Run it like Matthew Stafford was your quarterback and see what happens. Just learn as much as you can. And I'm exaggerating, obviously, for, those people who like to take clips of the show or comment on, sentences that I clearly meant in a different way or whatever, but the point is,
bleep the running game.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Yeah. The point is but you know what? If you want to throw on 3rd and 2, throw on 3rd and 2. If you want to throw 40 passes, throw 40 passes. The season is over. You're plus 1250 to make the playoffs. It is not happening. So throw the football and figure out as much as you can about this kid. And at some point, if you toss him into the deep end and he swims, then you got a quarterback. And if he doesn't, then you better go trade for Trevor Lawrence or something next year. I don't know, whatever, whoever you want to get. It just can't be only him.
Yeah, that last part especially, I 100% agree on. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, though. I think at this point, with the schedule that's ahead, these next 2 games, it's going to be really hard to win, one of, or even dare I say both of these games at Green Bay, at Seattle. Yeah, I think you just have to kind of, at this point, the season's over. You don't have to treat this thing with kid gloves anymore. Just throw this kid at the end of the deep end of the pool and just throw the ball all over the field. I mean, Mike Leach, Lincoln Riley, air raid offense. Just throw the ball. I'm serious though. I mean, you're right. I'm with you. I think at this point you don't really have. What else do you have to lose at this point? The season is lost. The moves that you made in the offseason, some of them have really worked out really well. You mentioned Will Fries being really good yesterday. I think overall he's been really good. The defensive tackles have picked up. The two guys you got there have been pretty good. But math is math, and right now it's just the odds are against you to go on a playoff run. So I think at this point you just kind of let it all hang out with JJ McCarthy. And McCarthy's never really, if we're being honest, McCarthy's never really been in this situation where he's just said this for weeks. He's never been in a situation where he's had the offense on his shoulders and it's just, all right, kid, throw us to victory. He was never asked to do that at Michigan. He's not been asked to do that in the NFL yet. I think now is a good time, as good a time as any, to just try that out and to see if he can handle it. The only way he's going to get better at this point is if he continues to play and get more throws in. Just throw the ball. He's got to throw the ball. That's the only way he's really going to get better at this point. You can't put the toothpaste back into the tube as far as, bringing him along, safely and not putting him out there yet because he might not be ready. It's already been kind of established. He was put out there sooner than he maybe needed to be, but now he's out there. So now you just got to see what you can get out of him. KOC, hit that pass button as much as you want now for the rest of the year and just see how things play out. And you know what? You do that over the next couple of weeks, and then, maybe we do see some realistic growth over the next, 3 games. And then when that Dallas game comes around, you're going up against that defense, we do see a 350-yard, 4-touchdown pass type of game with McCarthy. So, but I think it's going to take some ramping up to do that. And I think at this point, just let him throw the ball and see what happens.
And I know that last week, we were talking about KOC, run the ball. What's wrong with you?
I know. Yeah.
But here's the difference, because I do want to clarify the difference. The difference is last week, the idea was win. You have to win. And if you want to win with JJ McCarthy, you probably have to have a game plan like yesterday. And it was proof that even with the perfect game plan, the perfect protection, the perfect open receivers, they ran so well.
An ideal opponent.
Right. I may have gotten misty a little bit on that Jordan Mason run because Will Fries took a guy and just deleted him out of the play. It was like big fat center. We dreamed of this guard. We dreamed of this guard. We dreamed of both of these guards. Donovan Jackson was phenomenal yesterday. Like, this is what we asked for so long. Look at them. Yeah. Look at the run block. But the rest of the way, you don't need to find out about Aaron Jones, or Jordan Mason. You know what those guys are. You need to find out about JJ McCarthy. Let me ask you, Murph. You've seen a lot of quarterbacks in your day. As the elder statesman of the podcast.
I'm not a name dropper, though, so be careful what you're going to ask me.
No, I know. So tell me about the 1974 Detroit Lions quarterback. No, I'm just kidding. But
not that old.
Well, you could have picked up a history book while you were living in Detroit. But here's what I was really going to ask. You've seen a lot of quarterbacks in your day. You think he can make it? You think he could turn? Like, is this too far? Is this too far away?
I don't know if he can make it or not, but I do know it's way too early to throw him out. I can say that with confidence. I mean, you've got 5 games, and if you're at the point where you're just gonna throw him aside and deal with him later, maybe we can coach him up and turn him into a viable quarterback. I don't know what your alternative is. So no, I don't know for sure. What's interesting about what he's done, and it started in week 1, is there are always things to cherry pick out of his performance where you go, man, that's some NFL metal right there. That's somebody I can see playing a long time and leading, the Vikings to a tough win in January or a playoff kind of environment where it would be rough. Because he has moments. I mean, the 5 for 5 getting into the end zone and taking the 1-point lead yesterday was almost the same recipe that he used in Soldier Field to kind of wipe away a multitude of sins. The Vikings being the Vikings, of course, the special teams breakdown made it all for naught. But you can't unsee the previous 55 minutes, just like you can't unsee what 80% of his performances have been in totality have been awful. There's been 20% where you're like, boy, he's a gamer. Look at that throw. What a clutch throw. Look at that touch. Look at his moxie. Look at the guys rallying around him. Look at people responding to him. It's just not been enough. So I think he can. I think he needs to have the chance to make it. I'm going to make that assessment in January, because then you're going to have the sample size. Then you're going to see how he responds to adversity. And I'm not talking game to game, minute by minute, drive by drive. I'm talking about getting booed off the field. I'm talking about being a top 10 pick that the nation thinks was a waste of time. I'm talking about blocking out the noise, getting to work, being with your guys, doing the things that need to be done, and not treating it as a chore, but treating it as survival. And this is my livelihood. And I also have pride to be, worthy of the investment this club has made. I don't have any doubt, based on what I've seen and heard, that he's going to regress as far as work ethic or desire to be better. He wants to win. He wants to be the man. It's all there. It's just got to play out over, the course of games. And again, you say that it's just the inaccuracy and the inconsistency. If that can be shaped and molded into more acceptable numbers, I mean, look, 50% complete percentage, it's almost in cement right now. It's game by game. It's throughout the season. It's terrible. And you're not gonna last long if you can't get the ball to receivers who are open with good protection. It's not even table stakes. That's your ticket into the NFL. So yeah, I'm not willing to give up on him yet. I don't know if the market is or not. I'm not that plugged in. I know there's a lot of rage out there, and justifiable. But maybe now that it seems obvious at 4-6 that this team's headed to 6-11, 7-10, I'm not saying embrace it. I'm saying, come to terms with it and laser focus on what it's going to take to get him better. And if those measurables are where they are today on January 5th, then I think the franchise has some serious reckonings and decisions to make. And whether or not the brain trust that has told us all along we need to buy in, they should have the opportunity to make that decision. But I'm sure the Wilfs are looking like, what did you guys sell us here? I'm sure they would have backed up the truck for Darnold if need be, or Favre, or Rodgers. Geez, that was a Freudian slip. I just wonder if, there's got to be a lot of tension and second guessing throughout the building, because it's all interconnected right now. It's all interconnected to the coaching future, the GM philosophy, the investments that was made, the veterans in the locker room. Everybody sort of has a different agenda right now, but the only agenda that matters is McCarthy going to be able to get better? And it's really, really alarming how regressive he's looked.
When you look at the contracts that they handed out, it really, really looks like a 2-year thought process for JJ McCarthy of, we're going to have 2 with this group that we've built, legitimate shots to be very, very good, right? And probably the better shot all along was 2026, because you would assume that JJ McCarthy would have had a year of development and a year of playing and so forth. But, we also saw a real world where it was like Denver, where Nix gets dropped in. The team is pretty darn good. The coach is really good, and they win 10 games and they lose to Buffalo. But everyone in Denver felt like, this team is going in the right direction. I think that's the feeling that everyone wanted to come out with JJ McCarthy, and is still possible. Not that they can make the playoffs, but if you have 5 backup quarterback games and then you go 500 overall with JJ McCarthy, and at the end of the day, if instead of 52%, it's up to 62% after a pretty tough start, and instead of a 65 quarterback rating, it's up to an 85 quarterback rating by the end of the year, I think then you could say, all right, you still need a veteran backup. that could be your fallback type of option, but this is enough to go forward with. I guess I want to know, Manny, what your standard is the rest of the way, because when the season, and this is what's so darn hard, because I like, and you like this too, Manny, we like previewing games. We like talking about, the outside linebacker for this team's pretty good. Look out for him. And we like, how are they going to send blitzes? What's their corner matchup with Jefferson? Unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is a little bit off the table now as we focus on just what is McCarthy. So what could get you, if we consider it a 2-year window with this year and next year with this roster, what could get you to, within reason from what we've seen, to the point where you would say, yeah, you know what? I'm in for 2026 with JJ McCarthy. Like, how many wins or where does his numbers have to be at for you in order to say that?
So they're 4-6. I think if they can get to 8 wins, and we kind of talked about this a couple of weeks ago too, about just how many wins would it take for, us to feel good about where they're headed. And I think I'd closed in on like 9 wins.
Mm-hmm.
Now it kind of seems like 9 wins is a little off the table, because now you're talking about a 5-2 finish here in the last 7. I think that's a lot to ask. But I think at this point, if you can get to 8 and 9 and McCarthy is showing improvement and finishes the year strong and plays well, even if you lose both of those Lions and Packers games at the end of the year, but McCarthy plays really well and gives you some hope and finishes the season strong, that's where I would feel like, okay, I'm back on the bandwagon of let's give this kid another, off season, another year of training camp to just really fine tune all of the little things that need to be kind of tweaked and worked on. We're talking about the mechanics and the accuracy and all of that stuff. It's just give him another year to really kind of clean a lot of those things up. And then next year, stay healthy, get off to a good start, and see what happens. I don't know. I mean, they've spent so much in free agency these last 2 off seasons. I don't know how much they're going to be able to do that in 2026. They'll find a way. But I think it's going to be, just get him another year in the system and, see how 2026 goes. But in order for me to have that mindset, I think they've got to finish the season a lot stronger, and we've got to see some real legitimate improvement from JJ McCarthy as these last 7 games progress. Not, he had a nice drive to end the game, like yesterday. It's got to be, more complete games and actual improvement that we can see and that we can look at in the numbers as well. I think the numbers we got to see the numbers go up too for him. And you know what? If they start throwing the ball all over the place, like we're saying, I think we should see those numbers go up. But we got to see some real legitimate growth and development, not just what we want to try and convince ourselves that we're seeing. We've got to actually see it, and it's got to make sense.
Where's your bar, Murph?
I'm not even looking at victory totals right now, because when I see the schedule, I see maybe 3 wins the rest of the way. I mean, I'm thinking Washington, the Giants, and Dallas. And I wouldn't even say Dallas is a gimme just because their defense is awful, but you could go down there and lose 41-38. So what does that put them at, 7-10? I mean, that doesn't do much for me, but as Manny was saying, I want to see 4 quarters. I don't want to see 12 of 28 for 150 yards and 3 touchdowns. I'd like to see 20 of 24, for 280 to 300 and 3 touchdowns and no picks. And I also want to see, him take charge early in a game. I want to see him respond from a turnover, maybe a fumble that maybe wasn't his, an interception that wasn't his fault. I want to see how he responds the next drive. I don't want to see another 3 and out. I don't want to see it get worse before it gets better. Those are the things that just passing the eye test. I mean, I can't imagine being there yesterday, how frustrating it was to see the receivers that were so open, and so the dynamic of the game could have changed. I know everybody's kind of ripping on KOC for his pitch and catch quote, but I truly believe that a few of those completions on the first possession to Addison, I think he had wide open, or Naylor, one of the two, that it just fell in front of his feet. I mean, that just sets a tone and sets a level of expectation that's not healthy. So to get those kinds of embarrassing throws, the happy feet, stepping into pressure, managing your adrenaline, managing your emotions, being a professional. That's what it all comes down to. I want to see some of that sustained. I want to see him take a huge hit, get up and throw a bomb. I mean, these are the things that I think differentiate the Hall of Famers, the playoff contenders, and even just really good passers from guys you don't remember anymore, because it's how you respond in games. And then, like I said earlier, he hasn't dealt with this kind of the world is caving in around him pressure ever. Any 22-year-old elite athlete who gets drafted 10th overall and didn't have to really carry a lot of weight at Michigan, I mean, he's a superstar, and he got the money and he got the contract and he's got the buzz, and the market's just dying for him to deliver and wants to embrace him. But the patience only runs so deep, and that was on display yesterday. And I'm curious how he's going to respond. He's not going to be at home for a couple of weeks. Now he's got Lambeau. There's a big test. May not determine the division, but going up to Lambeau on a cold day and dealing with a playoff contender, how's he going to respond? All these little things, that's what I'm going to be looking for, not so much the record.
Well, I think that this next 2 weeks really is a make or break type of situation for somebody like JJ McCarthy. And when I say break, I mean could really break, because you have Micah Parsons. And look, the offensive line's been fantastic, but they're going to attack with Parsons from left, right, and center. They'll probably go after the center, Blake Brandel. We'll see. I mean, Ryan Kelly could potentially come back. I'm a little nervous about that myself, but Brandel, I think, has played really, really well. You know that Parsons is going to get after him, though. You can't stop that guy. They've got a really good defense. Their coverage unit has played a lot better. They've got a really good defensive coordinator. And then Seattle is totally stacked. Great defensive line, great secondary. They played really, really well and gave their team a chance to win despite 4 interceptions from Sam Darnold yesterday. That says a lot about the Seattle Seahawks. Plus, going to Seattle, I was kind of I'm not so sure that maybe it was really just that they had a great team, that whole Legion of Boom thing, and the 12th man. But then last year, having actually been there, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, it's real. It's real. That doesn't always mean they're going to win every home game, but it is really difficult to play in these places. So if he can get through these games, split them, win one of these, pick up some momentum for him to where, yeah, it isn't perfect, but it also, he says it doesn't snowball on him. I think it actually does. And I think it does on a lot of young quarterbacks, where when you're out there and you're on the stage and they're booing you and you're missing, it can really feel like you are drowning out there.
And just to piggyback real quick, sorry to interrupt you, but he's not only going to go to Seattle, but the whole NFL nation is going to be talking about the Darnold versus McCarthy matchup and what the Vikings could have and should have done. He's going to have to handle all of that going into that game as well.
And the thing is, the hard thing about with that whole personality bit is that we have seen it work at times where guys have fought through it and they've gotten to the other side and it's been impressive. But we've also seen some guys who are really, really great as people and as leaders and all that sort of stuff. And it just, you couldn't throw the ball well enough. And I think of Kenny Pickett when I think of that, where it's like, is Kenny, I think, he's still a backup in the league, and he won or at least played well in a couple of games for Philly last year. And that's great, but he just couldn't throw the ball well enough. And when we talk about this experiment of, you're dropping a younger quarterback into a great team, they're not the first ones to ever do it. Trey Lance was another example of that. I think the Indianapolis Colts believed that they were a really good team when they drafted Anthony Richardson, and that's why they started him right away, is because they thought they could compete if they could just sort of work through the inconsistency. So there have been times where it's worked great. Jalen Hurts came right into being a starter and got them to the playoffs. Then the next year he's in the Super Bowl and he had to work through some things. I think we're still at the point where we don't really know yet, but I also don't think that, he is not going to be a screwball where he's going to throw people under the bus and he's going to not come to practice on time. Like, he's not going to be that guy, But also just being not that guy and working hard and trying your best doesn't mean that this will actually work for you. Football is very, very hard that way.
You can't just intangible your way into being
Yes.
a great quarterback.
Yes.
That intangibles are great to have, and all of the great ones in the league have them. Lamar has it, Mahomes has it, Josh Allen has it, but it's going to take more than just the intangibles to be one of the great ones in this league. You've got to have the physical ability, the accuracy's got to be there. All of those things have to be there in order for you to be the total package.
What else do you guys want to talk about with this game? Did anybody else play a football game? Gosh, poor Miles Price got another kick return taken back. Had a great game. The special teams are just determining games all over the NFL now. And I feel like, you know how I just banged the drum for that kickoff to change. I both can gesture at it and say, see how great this is. And also, oh my gosh, it's kind of messed up everything. It's made games so much less predictable. It's made starting field positions ridiculous. It's changed just about everything in the NFL. I don't know what to say about the end of the game. Usually they've been very good at stopping returners. I did wonder one thing. Here's a hypothetical for you, Manny. If they just stop Devin Duvernay and then sack Caleb Williams and they win that game, what do we talk? Are we still having the same conversation or not?
I think so, but I think I think we're still having the conversation of them, with a chance to go on a run here and make the playoffs. But I think all of the concerns that we have with JJ McCarthy right now are still being talked about, because if we're being honest, we just saw one good drive from him yesterday, and it was great that it happened when it happened. It was at the most clutch time possible in the game, late in the game, last possession. But up to that point, the first 54, 55 minutes of the game was not good, and he struggled. So I think we would still be having the conversation, but I think we would be having it within the prism of, well, this team still has a chance to make the postseason.
Yes.
What can this quarterback do now? How much of what we saw on the last drive is an indication that he's really going to start to pick things up and help this team get to the playoffs. But I would still think that all of the concerns that we have are real, and even if they would have held on and won the game yesterday, they would still exist.
You feel that way, Murph?
Yeah, I think the conversation would be, can they make the playoffs in spite of JJ McCarthy?
Yeah.
Because I think, what he did yesterday was in the final drive, it would not have been enough to cover up the blemishes of the day. And it also kind of, it's funny because it does harken back to the week one game against the Bears at Soldier Field, where he was pretty miserable for 3 quarters and then got it together, led them on 3 touchdown drives, including the scramble to score for the winning score. And it's like, wow, what a debut, right? You can almost just erase everything that happened for 45 minutes because of how he performed in the fourth quarter. I don't think he would have gotten that grace yesterday, because we all saw how awful it was. And frankly, if he was able to go 5 for 5 and lead a touchdown drive, and they were able to get the running game and Mason to start the comeback, where was that earlier? And why was it so impossible to be that accurate and that focused and that dialed in earlier? Because then it begs the question, is he ever going to be a complete player? So yes, the W would have been great. The manner in which they got it would have been nice. Finally winning another home game. Yeah, by the way, they're 1-4 at home, which is just, unforgivable for the advantage that stadium has. I said a couple of weeks ago after the Lions win, none of that's going to matter if they can't take care of business at home. And the way in which they lost against Baltimore and Chicago, completely different ways. McCarthy was ineffective in both, more so yesterday than a week ago when it was the false starts and whatnot. But it just feels like he can't get a free pass anymore. So no, I think we'd be nitpicking him big time. They would still be viable at 5-5, but now the meat grinder's there. I mean, you're going to Green Bay, you're going to Seattle, Washington is, DOA, it looks like. Dallas could be a win, but you still got to play Detroit and Green Bay at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure we keep chalking up the Giants game. I mean, if it's cold and windy and who knows who's quarterbacking or coaching or doing what with that team, I don't know. They're so unhinged. They're dangerous. So I wouldn't even know if it's even good to predict a
They
win
played the
there.
Packers tough yesterday.
Yeah, they did. So,
Yeah.
That might not be the the walkover. So he would be dealing with all of the challenges that lie ahead. He just may be able to. He might have been able to wink his way out of it a little bit yesterday, but no, we'd still be looking at the glaring gaffes that really have people up in arms.
Right. And if you can't beat this, I think they're a very mediocre Bears team. I know what the record says. I also know who else they've beat. Then we can't really write anybody in as just a guaranteed W. I think there's opportunities there and opportunities for McCarthy to have a lot of clean pockets and a lot of looks at open wide receivers. And that's where you could ultimately go back to this game at some point and say, well, look, you could see the improvement because when he played the Bears, this happened. And against Dallas, that happened. But to your point, I think that the discussion would feel a little different in the way that we'd be saying, good job, KOC. You found the formula to win with McCarthy. If he hits 3 more throws and, hey, some guys use some stickum on their hands, then maybe I think we'd focus on the drops probably a little more. I think if the drops were the only incompletions and not the 8 other passes that were nowhere close, I would probably, or, that some of the drops they didn't mean that much or were on throws that were 1,000 miles an hour over Justin Jefferson's head, but technically it is a drop, like that kind of thing. Well, we'd probably focus on that more and say, man, if they just catch the balls, then at least you could get mediocre 150 yards offense, run the ball a lot, and you can win some games this year in the NFL that because of the environment that is sort of set up for teams running, kicking field goals, like that kind of thing. Get 2 first downs, kick a field goal, and you're scoring points. But I still think it would be very worrisome through 5 games what the statistics are saying about JJ McCarthy. It would just be much more of, man, if they could just win this game at Lambeau, get back to 500, and then, man, like this season is still interesting. It's still live. It went not live yesterday. So the FanDuel question of the day, my friends, was just who are you guys counting as legitimate Super Bowl contenders after another week in the National Football League? Manny, what would your list look like? Let me give you on FanDuel the top teams in terms of Super Bowl odds as of this moment. Philadelphia Eagles are at the top at plus 500. The Rams plus 650. Buffalo is plus 800. Then Kansas City is still a top 5 Super Bowl odds team, despite the fact that they are not in the playoffs, plus 1,000.
Nostalgia pick.
Yeah, I guess so. The Colts, Lions, Seahawks, Ravens, Broncos, Packers, and the Patriots all the way at plus 1,700. The market is not buying them. And I'm not sure that I would put anybody else in that conversation unless I'm missing someone. San Francisco got a win yesterday. Who do you want to put in your legit, not just the like, maybe, but like I really think this team could win it all.
Well, if I'm looking at the NFC specifically, Philadelphia and the Rams, I think are just head and shoulders above everybody else. I think Seattle's really good too, but I think they're maybe a notch down. But Philadelphia and the Rams, I think are really far ahead of everybody else. The Rams, especially, just Matthew Stafford. My goodness, how he continues to do this is just unbelievable. On the AFC side, it's a little bit harder. I mean, I think, Kansas City, the fact that they're sitting as like a 9 seed in the AFC right now at 5-5. But I think as long as they're still mathematically in the playoff hunt, I think you can't count them out, mainly because of number 15 and number 87 too has still got a little bit left in the tank, it looks like. New England, I love what New England is doing. I'm not quite sure that they're there yet, but it's hard for me to say that because Drake May is playing so well right now.
Yep.
I mean, you talk about a young quarterback that has made a jump. He's been fantastic. Mike Vrabel can really coach, but it's just something just tells me that they're not quite there yet. And then Denver's defense is fantastic, but I don't know if they're going to be able to have enough offensively in the postseason to, I don't know if they're going to be able to do enough offensively for the defense to just sort of carry them the way they carried Peyton Manning back in 2015 to winning the Super Bowl. I don't think that they're there yet. Indianapolis is a hard one too, because of, I don't know if this Daniel Jones thing is going to fall off the table or not. So the AFC is really hard to pick. I don't know if there really is a legitimate team outside of Kansas City, just because, and maybe Baltimore too, because it feels like, they've won 4 in a row now after that 1-5 start, and they have Lamar. Seem like they seem healthy now. So maybe Baltimore is that team that's starting to look like their old selves now too. So I'll go with Philadelphia, the Rams, and then Kansas City and Baltimore as kind of my teams that I think can legitimately still win it.
Murph?
Yeah, I was a little skeptical about the Eagles for a bit, and especially last week with all the A.J. Brown drama just spilling over once again, and their inability to really do much offensively. It just seems very perplexing. And they weren't great offensively yesterday. They were good enough, but the way they dominated Detroit on defense and the way they played defensively, they may just be able to win 16-9 all the way through. And I think they have the tiebreaker with the Rams because of a head-to-head. So if they end up playing in the snow again, I feel like the road is really going to be difficult if it goes through Philadelphia. Now, that being said, the Rams, though, they always fly under the radar because they're out on the West Coast, and maybe we don't get to see enough games. And, it just feels like they're doing it. Stafford is Stafford, and he's producing at a 30-year-old level. We know that. But defensively, that's a team I would not want to mess with either. They find a way to make huge plays. It's a young unit. They got skill players. McVay just seems to get so much out of all of his team, and they want to run through a wall for him. It was a big win against Seattle. I think Seattle's going to be a challenge, but I really think it's going to have to go through LA or Philadelphia, and whoever wins that NFC Championship game, I think wins the Super Bowl. I still like Buffalo as a team of destiny because they have Josh Allen, and it's now or never with them. And I'm kind of rooting for them a little bit, Coller. I think the country would love to see them in there.
Yep.
Certainly not the Chiefs. I think people are done with the Chiefs. I don't know if the Chiefs are done with us. I think they're still going to be a factor. They could be, look, Mahomes in a playoff game. I don't care where it's at or what the stakes are. He's going to come to play. But Denver, that was a huge win. I mean, because you really are taking down the king, right? You gave him your best shot at home. You got a young quarterback who, doesn't really light up the scoreboard, but man, when the game's on the line and the money throws need to be made, he's proven he's able to do that, and nobody's sacking more teams than the Broncos. So I would say they would almost be my, dark horse in a way to really maybe upend some things. But I really do think it's right now where we're at. It's an Eagles-Rams league right now.
Which is funny to call them the dark horse because they beat Kansas City and they're 9-2, and yet no one has bought into them all year long. I think that they should be a Super Bowl favorite in part because they could win the whole conference, and then they're playing at home and with a bye week. I mean, if you go out to Denver, I think it's a really, really hard place to play against that defense. And it should be mentioned, Bo Nix has the lowest sack percentage in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
Which is something
I forgot about that.
It doesn't get baked into the statistics, but when you play pretty safe football, that, all you need is a couple of plays when you're not taking negatives all the time. And they are playing a field position type of game, which I feel like in this year can actually work. Even in previous years, we would have said, no way, the quarterback's got to be much better. But would you be shocked to see sort of a early Ben Roethlisberger type Pittsburgh Steelers team or an early Joe Flacco Ravens? Like, that's what this Denver team feels like. It's not that we've never seen teams like this go to the Super Bowl. And that's even with superstar quarterbacks in the conference. Buffalo is up and down, but you tend to think that Allen is going to be able to drag them to places where maybe their roster doesn't deserve them to be. They also have a great offensive line, which I think helps when they get to the playoffs. So they belong up there, but I feel like Denver being only plus 1,400 is pretty surprising to me. And yesterday, I would like to congratulate some Vikings fans on their Super Bowl, which was yesterday when Sam Darnold lost, because they reacted to the loss like it was their championship. So congratulations. I'll be interested to see what those rings look like for a lot of you. But, the thing about Sam Darnold,
maybe they can show them off in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I guess so.
when
Yeah.
when the head-to-head happens.
Yes. Sam Darnold lost to the Rams ring. But he dropped from the number 1 PFF quarterback to number 2. So congrats on that. But look, I think with Sam Darnold, where he's settled into over his career is the same spot as Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, Justin Herbert, where there are kryptonites to these guys. They are great quarterbacks and they win a lot of games, and under the right circumstances, they're great. But Justin Herbert is terrible yesterday versus a great Jaguars defense because they get to him. And the same thing with Darnold. He's missing his center, and then Gray Zabel got hurt. What does that sound like? It sounds like the playoff game from last year. And then all of a sudden, he's trying to force it, and he throws bad interceptions because that's who he is. Jared Goff, last night, what did Philadelphia do? They got to him, and he had no real answer for it. Like, this is a lot of quarterbacks in the league overall. I think that's what makes Stafford so hard to beat, is that he's a guy you can't just knock down over and over. I would also put Jordan Love in that same category. So the question you'd have to ask if you're having that whole debate is whether you would prefer, 5 or 6 runs at it or something with a Sam Darnold level quarterback that also a lot of the rest of the league has this type of quarterback, or you're aiming for what the Vikings tried to do this year, which was the rookie quarterback contract and stack your team. Well, that's what Denver has done. And they've had a lot of success. It has not worked so far for the Vikings, but anybody who's just dancing on, I shouldn't say his grave. What's his record? 7-3. What's your record? So dancing on that game yesterday is just idiotic to me, because Sam Darnold was awesome for your football team and won 14 games and played his butt off. Like, what are you mad at? So I don't know, weird stuff. But fans are weird. So, all right, wrap this up with this. We'll look forward. Manny and I will preview Vikings and Packers. We'll pick the schedule on Thursday. What do we make of the Packers? Like, what's our early feeling on the Packers? They go to New York, they play Jameis, they get a win. Jordan Love, I watched a little bit of that game. I was like, his numbers didn't look like his performance. He played great. You talk about drop passes. I think they had like 4 or 5 too. I thought he was really good in that game. He got banged up, but it's the Giants. Where are we at with Green Bay, Manny?
I think that they kind of just seem like the team that they've been the last couple of years, which is really good, going to make the playoffs, but they're going to run into the Rams or the Eagles, and it's just not going to be good enough on the road, having to play either one of those two teams. And it's just not going to be enough. I think getting Micah Parsons, obviously that's any team that picks up Micah Parsons is just like A+, man, because he's a monster. But it just feels like there's not enough consistency from them as a team as a whole to make me really want to believe that they can go on a deep run to the Super Bowl. I think for that to happen, it's going to have to be Jordan Love just having like 4 games in the playoffs where he is just unreal and throwing for 350 yards or 400 yards in every game, and he just kind of throws them to the Super Bowl. Other than that, I just don't think that they have enough. They don't really. I mean, Romeo Doubs is a good wide receiver, but is he like really a true number one? He's number one for them, but is he? How many teams in the league would he be a number one receiver for? And I think that's going to kind of hurt them a little bit come postseason. So I think they're good, but just not quite good enough to really be taken seriously as like, oh yeah, that team's going to kick everybody's ass and go to the Super Bowl. I don't see that yet from them.
Yeah. KFT says, I don't think people are mad at Darnold. There's a recognition that maybe he plays bad in really big games. At least he's playing in big games. Murph?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, he is there, and he probably will be there this January again. The Packers, it's been hard for me to get a feel for them. I don't want to say they've leveled off, but there was always this sort of ascension that they seem to be on. Love taking them there, but he's banged up again. He's got a little bit of a shoulder issue. He seems to have really, and it's probably his style of play. You know, he's fearless, takes a lot of hits in the pocket, is not afraid to lower his shoulder. I don't know how effective he's going to be later on. I think the Lambeau mystique is waning a bit. The tie to Dallas, you know, may benefit him, may hurt him. We're not sure how that's going to play out. I don't see, you know, Chicago feels like a fraud to me, but they've got 7 wins. So that whether that plays out as frauds or they keep going up, I mean, Green Bay's certainly within their sights, and the Lions look vulnerable too. So I think it's there for Green Bay, and I think it's about time that LaFleur step on the gas, because it's weird that he's taking questions about his job security, which seems a little odd considering his overall record and where he's at today. But there just seems to be a sense that they're just not as good as they should be, or they're leaving too much on the table, especially offensively. Then again, you acquire Micah Parsons, and he's a game breaker. And he's the one guy who could probably single-handedly win you 1 or 2 games down the stretch, because he's going to destroy an offense with one snap. So I feel like they can be dangerous because of that. I think Love's health, Jacobs is hurt now too. So everybody's banged up, but they seem to be nicked in some key spots. So, Love's health and relative productivity and development, and Parsons' ability to break open any game at any moment still, I think, leaves them, somebody to be contended with.
I think that they fall into the category of all second-tier contenders in the NFC, which is good, flawed. San Francisco, good team, but they're flawed. Like, they don't have a great defense, and they're banged up and missing key players. And I would say the same for the Packers, the Lions. Good. The Lions are a good team, but they're flawed, especially when
they're backpedaling a bit.
Right, when they call pass interferences that don't exist at the end of the game, but they had 6 points or whatever at that point.
Yeah,
so that was my thing of like, yeah, you're right. That wasn't a pass interference, but also come on. I mean, your team was terrible.
They weren't winning that game regardless.
Right. It is, to me, Philadelphia and Los Angeles are titans. And then you have everybody is sort of fighting for, maybe we can be a contender too, which is Seattle, Green Bay. Although it wouldn't have been funny if Will Reichert's kicking for that team, then Seattle wins. But it would have been crazy if he had made that. But either way, the point just being that like there's a clear first tier, clear second tier, and they fall into it. What I'm curious about, JJ McCarthy has never faced a Micah Parsons. It was Carson Wentz who played against Myles Garrett. And then, look at the otherwise. Aiden Hutchinson is great. And there's no doubt about that. He's great. He's not Micah, I don't think. I think Micah's the best of the best. Him and Myles Garrett are 1 and 1A in the NFL. And I would say Hutchinson is a little bit below that. And also Hutchinson is just a defensive end. Parsons will line up anywhere and do anything. There's never a time where he's faced a player like that. So that is a unique challenge. But I think that they're good. I also think you could beat them. They didn't crush the Giants. They've lost to the Browns this year. Like, on a bad day for them, you can win. And if they do, then I think we are having a slightly different discussion. I don't think it'll change the playoff odds, but we're saying, okay, there's the win that you were looking for that might be able to propel whatever. And I think division games are closer than usually any other. Manny, Murph, we're going to do a lot of this over the coming weeks of breaking down every single thing that happened at the quarterback position. We'll try to spread the love a little bit more to other positions and different things like that. But this is at the top of the list for most interesting as we go forward. So thank you for your time, Murph. Manny, we will see you on Thursday night. And don't forget to answer that FanDuel question of the day. You're legit Super Bowl contenders, not the maybe, but your true legit Super Bowl contenders. So thank you, and thank everybody for watching / listening. And we will catch you all tomorrow with Jeremiah Searles, and then we'll go forward through the week. Got some good guests for you. Even Aaron Nagler is supposed to come on to drive everybody crazy. So we'll catch you guys all later. Football.